Chapter 15, The Awakening. Caroline had only the dimmest recollection of what had happened. She vaguely remembered getting out of bed when she heard her family leaving for the theater, but she had no memory at all of pulling on her coat and boots. She did remember that it had been cold outside and that it had seemed a very long 3 blocks to the theater, but when she went in the stage entrance, she stood by the radiator a minute, which warmed her, and then she heard Beth and Josh saying their lines, and after that, she only remembered how bright the lights had seemed and how dark the audience, and all the hands reaching to pull her back. Mrs. Malloy was sitting by her bed when she opened her eyes again, and so was Dr. Raskin. It sure looks like strep, the doctor was saying. We'll take a throat culture to be sure, but I'd bet my last dollar. Caroline gagged when they swabbed her throat. It was so sore. I know you're feeling rotten, Caroline, but I've given you a shot of penicillin and we're working on that fever. You should feel better in a day or two. Call me if you need to. And with a pat on her knee, he picked up his bag and left the room. Mrs. Malloy sat down again. I feel awful, she whispered. I know. My head hurts and my throat's on fire. I know, said her mother. And I had the most awful dream. I dreamed that I went on stage in my pajamas. I know, Mrs. Malloy said again. Caroline closed her eyes and slept once more, and the next time she opened them, Beth and Eddie were sitting beside her bed. Hey, Sleeping Beauty, how you feeling? Asked Eddie. Awful. I keep having this dream that I'm going on stage in my pajamas. That was a nightmare, all right, said Beth, but it could have been worse. Caroline tried to sit up. It didn't really happen, did it? Beth and Eddie looked at each other. Well, she's going to find out eventually, Eddie whispered. You might as well tell her. Yes, it really happened. You came on stage in your pajamas and boots and coat and said you were Beulah. Or the sickly daughter, either one, added Eddie. Then there were lights in my eyes and there were hands reaching out trying to pull me back. You bet, said Eddie. The most excitement Buckman has had all year. But don't worry, everyone realized you were simply out of your head. I'll never go out of the house again. I'll never be able to face anyone, Eddie. And she started to cry. We shouldn't have told her, Beth whispered. And have her find it out from the Hatfords? Are you nuts? I want to be homeschooled. I want to go to a convent. I want to go back to Ohio now. Mrs. Malloy came in the room, and with a stern look at Beth and Eddie, she sent them scurrying. Caroline, the first thing actresses have to learn is to use the things that happen to them, even the awful things. Don't try to throw it away. I know you're embarrassed, but whenever you need to act embarrassed in a play, you'll know exactly how that feels. You'll remember this moment, and remembering will help your cheeks grow pink and your pulse to race. Keep every sad or angry or fearful or embarrassing thing that ever happens to you in your memory. Thanks, Mom, said Caroline. It did help to think that maybe all actresses had to go through this from time to time. People would forget all about tonight and remember her only as being a famous actress. But that was a long way off. Right now, she had to think about facing her friends at school, and worse yet, she had to face the Hatfords. It was Thursday before she could go to school. Wally had been bringing her homework by and leaving it with Mrs. Malloy, but now the time had come to face the class. The first day back, she asked Eddie to walk in front of her so no one could see her coming. Still, she felt absolutely sick inside. She walked into her classroom. She knew that everyone was looking at her, even the teacher. Wally, in fact, kept leaning forward in his seat, as if she might go berserk and take a bite out of his shoulder or something. But Caroline tried to remain calm. Welcome back from the crazy house, Wally said. You're right, said Caroline. I was positively out of my head with fever. It was the highest fever a girl has ever had and survived. And if it had been any higher, I would have died. No kidding, said Wally. In fact, said Caroline, I didn't have any shoes on, just boots. And when I walked to the theater, I couldn't even feel the cold. If there had been hot coals on stage, I could have walked right across them and not even felt it. When a person is in such a feverish state as she could stick knives in her arms and pierce her tongue and not feel a thing. In fact, Caroline, do you have something you'd like to share with the whole class, or can the private conversation wait until recess? It can wait, said Caroline. But when Miss Applebaum began to write on the board, Caroline leaned forward and whispered, in fact, I just may get my name in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the highest known temperature of any 9-year-old who lived to tell about it. Chapter 16, War. It seemed as though January might end peacefully. Caroline, Wally noticed, was quieter than usual. Josh noticed that Beth was kinder and more polite. Eddie, Jake reported, seemed as though she might be friendly after all. The temperature dropped to the low 20s and the Buckman River completely froze over, bringing out sleds and ice skates. Skaters glided down one side of Island Avenue under the road bridge that led to the business district. Then it snowed, wonderful snow. No one knew how it happened, but the peace didn't last. The battle didn't start with Beth and Josh. It didn't start with Caroline and Wally. It didn't even start with Jake and Eddie. And it certainly didn't start with Peter. All Wally knew was that he and his brothers were standing on the swinging bridge looking down at the Malloy girls ice skating on the river below. And the next minute, Caroline and her sisters were frantically building a snow fort on their side of the river as though they suspected the boys were up to no good. Every so often, the girls shot suspicious glances their way. What did we do? Asked Josh. Why are they glaring at us? Who knows? Who cares? But they aren't building a fort to play house in. You build a fort for war. Yeah, it sure looks like war, all right. From where he was standing, he could see Beth and Eddie rolling big balls of snow down the bank on their side of the river and stacking them one on top of the other. Caroline, meanwhile, appeared to be making snowballs. Okay, said Jake, let's fight. The boys ran to their end of the swinging bridge and went slipping and sliding down the bank. Hey, look what the guys are up to, Wally heard Eddie shout. I told you they were planning something back there on that bridge. We'll settle this once and for all. All right, you guys, Eddie yelled. Everything on this side of the line is our territory. Everything on the other is yours. Don't cross the line and you won't get popped. A snowball hit her on the shoulder. At that, Beth and Caroline shrieked and came swarming out of their fort. Suddenly, the air was filled with snowballs going in both directions, some hitting their targets, some smashing on the ice, all of them accompanied by hoops and yells. Every so often, both camps retreated for a time to make more snowballs or repair their forts, and the walls grew even higher. Peter and Wally were busily making peepholes so that they could see out in case Eddie got it in her crazy head to run over and stuff a snowball down somebody's neck. They stayed until dusk in, and it was too dark to see anymore. Then they went home half frozen. After dinner that evening, the boys gathered, as usual, in Jake and Josh's bedroom. Let's go out and dump boiling water on their snow fort, said Wally. Nah, that'd take too long. You'd have to keep carrying kettle after kettle. I think we should just go and knock it down. Then they'll come over and knock ours down. Not without a fight, they won't. Come on, let's go. Mrs. Hatford came upstairs and just then to remind Peter to take a bath. So Wally and the twins decided to go without him. Let's wait another 15 minutes to be sure the girls aren't out there, and then we'll sneak over. Finally, they put on their jackets and caps and mittens and went outside. From the road, the deserted ice gleamed in the light of the street lamp. I don't know, said Josh. It does seem sort of a shame to tear their fort down. It has turrets and everything. It looks like a castle. Ha, said Jake. If they were out here right now, don't you think they'd be tearing down ours? You think they'd just walk across the ice and admire it? You think, pow, bip, bop, whop. The Hatfords were ambushed from their own fort. With blood-curdling yells, Eddie, Beth, and Caroline rose up from inside the boys' fort, lobbing snowball after snowball, then ducking down when the boys returned their fire. The boys retreated up the bank to rethink their strategy. How did they know we were coming? Wally panted. They couldn't have been waiting out here all this time. I don't know, but it sure looks like a setup to me. Peter, the boys said together. They stomped across the road and into the house, and in single file, they marched up the stairs. There was still water in the bathtub. There was a wet towel on the floor. There were wet footprints leading from the bathroom, past the phone in the hall, and on into Peter's room. Jake opened Peter's door. He was lying motionless. His eyes were closed, and he was breathing deeply. He looked too innocent for words. The three boys did a little homework, and then with their parents putting up shelves in the basement, they slipped on their coats again, their caps and mittens, and went back out for the third time that day. Carefully, they looked about. They walked out to the middle of the swinging bridge so that they could see down inside their fort. In the light from the street lamp, they could see nothing. They crossed the river and slid back down the bank, but there were no girls anywhere to be seen. Wally felt slightly better about tearing down the girls' fort after they were ambushed. They didn't really do anything to us, you know, Josh said. If we hadn't come on out here to knock down their fort in the first place, we wouldn't have run into them. Hey, it's all in fun. This is what brothers and sisters do, Jake said. He drew back one leg and kicked the girls' fort. A huge ball of snow on the bottom gave way. The wall crumbled, the turret landing in a heap at the foot. It was sort of fun to watch the turrets fall, Wally decided as he slid around the ice. After that, it was just a matter of pushing down the rounded hunks of snow and stepping on them until the fort was nothing more than a pile of scattered snow on the ice. I wish we had a flag, said Jake. Why? So we could prop it up on the pile. Let the girls know we were here. I think they'll figure it out pretty fast, said Josh. Who else would do this to them? Yeah, but it would be fun to leave our mark somehow. You're really weird, Wally.